motivation, yeah, to get through the day. Just tune in, cause we'll make a way. Positivity. So if you need empowerment to make a change, just start with today. And tune into Man Cave Monday. Man Cave Monday with Pastor OJS. OJS. Oh yes. Oh yes. Man Cave Monday. Man Cave Monday with Pastor OJS. OJS. Oh yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, welcome to another edition of Man Cave Monday. This is season 3, and we are so thankful to all of you for joining us and for supporting this platform. Even now, as you're coming in, go ahead and share this page, this interview. I promise you are going to be blessed by this conversation. But I want to introduce our guest for today. He is a man that I have long admired since our time here in the Gadsden County area, especially, but just the greater North Florida area. And I'm just so proud to know this man and to be connected with him. He is Sheriff Morris Young, Gadsden County, Florida. Sir, welcome to the Man Cave. Glad to have you.
Yes, sir. Good to be in the Man Cave.
Yes, indeed. And it's just a pleasure to have you. I know that you're busy and you are doing so much in our community and such great work with the Sheriff's Department. So I thank you for taking the time to do this.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
Absolutely. So for those that don't know you, can you just give us a little bit background, where you're from, and then how did you decide on law enforcement as your life's career?
Well, I'm from Gadsden County. I've been a Gadsdonian all my life, and it's just one of those things where you're young and looking for a job. Here in Gadsden County for years, you really don't think about a career in law enforcement as a young black man growing up. I tell you this story, in a lead into why I became who I am, but. I used to, as a young man, I used to have a motorcycle, and I was always getting stopped by cops, whether it was Quincy, Florida Highway Patrol, all of that, getting citations, used to run from the police. And I never forget this trooper. He pulled me over, and he went to write me some citations, and he did. And he came back, that was on a Friday night. He came back the next day and by my house, and I was afraid because I thought I was going to jail. And he called me to his car, and he said, "Young man, I noticed your attitude." And he said, I'll tear these citations up right now. He said, "We're looking for, young black men, in the Florida Highway Patrol." And, he said, I just want to help you out. And he was a white trooper. And, I was very inspired by the fact that he saw something in me. And never forget, shortly after that, I had a friend who just got on with the police department. Back then, it was public safety, Quincy Public Safety. And it was fire and police. And he said, "Hey, man, I got a job at the fire department." I'm like, "Okay, you want to be a fireman?" And he said, "Yeah, and then I want to be a police." Police? Man, police. But anyway, I needed a job. And so, I got hired, but I was really inspired by, on the law enforcement side, I never forgot that trooper. Who really encouraged me about law enforcement. And that's where my career started in 1988.
Wow. And so you went from the Quincy Police Department to then the Sheriff's Department?
Yeah, I actually did. I did 10 years at the Quincy Police Department. I worked a year as a fireman.
Wow.
And of course, like I say, it was public safety, and we did fire and police. And I got on the police side. Back then, the older guys, it was like, "Hey, we're going to sit back in the fire station, wait on fires, and y'all get out there on the street and chase folk."
Yes, sir.
And so, that's where I got my start from. And in 1988, I actually came here to the Sheriff's Department as an investigator. And in 2000, I ran for sheriff, and I lost. And in 2004, I ran again, and thank God I'm here.
Amen to that. And I had just gotten, my family and I had just gotten to the Tallahassee area in 2004 when you were running. And so to watch you since then and what you've done in the area of community policing and community building, those relationships, the very story that you tell about the trooper that pulled you over, but decided to do something to help you. He went the extra mile, I would say.
He did.
And that's why you are where you are, today. That's extraordinary.
Yeah. And for so long we've divided the two, police and community. And I'm a Gadsdenian. And so, I consider myself, although I'm the sheriff, I'm a part of the community. I am the community. I'm from here. We say, hey, where's the trust between police and the community?
Yes.
Where's the trust between me and I am the community? And so trust me. And, on my patrol cars, you will see that little logo on the back, honesty and integrity.
Wow.
And I police by that. That's my guidelines right there.
Wow. There's so much I want to get into with you. Y'all, this is Sheriff Morris Young, Gadsden County, Florida. So proud to have him in the man cave with us tonight. The story that you tell, obviously there is a generation of people who may have a different narrative with their interactions with law enforcement. There's, a history of law enforcement being used, against us, especially in the African-American community.
Yes.
But what I see here in Gadsden County is an intentional effort on your part to, as you said, engage with the community. You are the community. It's not a separate entity. And so with the climate that we're in right now, and I promise, Sheriff, not to get you in any trouble,
yes,
but the climate that we're in right now, people are on edge. People have a distrust. When you call the name of George Floyd, or you call Philando Castile, and you call all these different names, Ahmaud Arbery, and the list is endless, seems like.
Yes.
What do you say to a community? Obviously in Gadsden County, we have a great dynamic with law enforcement.
Yeah.
But what do you say to, an individual who's seeing these things and has a natural fear of law enforcement?
Well, I like to tell the stories about my life, but I remember when community policing was introduced me in the city of Quincy under the leadership of Robert Barkley.
Okay.
At the time, he was a captain with the police department, and he had to talk me into doing it because, I thought I was the police. Carrying a gun was pretty cool to me. And but I was introduced to community policing, and I get into the implicit bias, but this is where the biases come from.
Okay.
I never forget that, my office moved from the police department to one of the housing projects here in Quincy. And we considered it, as police officers and most of the community as the worst in the entire Gadsden County area. And I had no problem going out there, placing my office in one of those apartments, and being a part of that community. It was heavily involved in crime.
Yes, sir.
Folk out there didn't like the police. Why are you here? We don't want you here. And when they engaged me, they knew that I was out there for a reason, and that was to help them. There was youth out there. I'm big on youth, and and I did things with the youth out there, and parents, and even the elderly. And when they saw that, young men had a found respect for me. And I tell you, the problems and issues all over the county, people want to be the police. They want to police. What is police to a lot of folk? I mean, you think about hunting season. When folks, some want to hunt squirrels, some want to hunt bears, and big game and all of that. and they look at police the same way. And, for me, we're dealing with people. If you don't treat me, I mean, I'm a young black man, and I travel all over the United States.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not just in Gadsden County. So if I'm in DC, I want to be treated, like somebody by the police, not just a black man. And I think these biases come in to where, people, I'll police in your community, but I won't live in your community. I don't want to be a part of your community. I don't want to go to the same stores you go to. I don't want to live in your neighborhood. So these biases come about, and they look at it as that's a bad place,
right?
And I need to treat people in a bad way, and this is where they get in trouble at. Deputies here understand and know that you can't mistreat anybody.
That's right.
Not continue to be a law enforcement.
No matter what area they live in, no matter what neighborhood they live in. No matter what
area, if you came from, I just said Timbuktu, understand and learn the culture of this community.
That's right.
If you want to stop somebody and you want to, and they are even in the wrong, if you can't stop them for say, hey, I just stopped you and I see where you're driving is awesome. If you're not willing to do that, don't just stop them because their speed or what have you.
Right.
You want to be able to encourage. You want to be able to, even if the person don't agree with being stopped.
That's right.
You got a level of training that, hey, you know how to deal with somebody who's carried away in whatever way when you stop them, because you are the police. You intimidate.
Naturally
intimidate folks.
Yes.
Listen, if I get stopped and I'm out of town, those lights bother me.
Yes.
I get it. I have a fear of police lights. Turn on behind me.
And it doesn't matter if my license is up to date, my tags are good, my insurance is good, my music is not blasting. There's just still something about those blue lights that make a brother nervous.
Something about the blue lights.
Yeah.
And we need, as police, we need to understand that. We need to understand. And then I think, the problem and issues we're having
yes, sir.
In the country is not only just, culturally, but, with implicit bias, but at the same time, training.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
Hey, we got to train, we got to change the way we train.
And that's
we got to implement people, real people
yes.
in our training.
Yes.
And this is where I'm having the conversations from the governor on down across the state and even into the United States through the Sheriff Association. We got to change the way we train.
Yes.
And, there are sheriffs and police chiefs that are, implementing implicit biases,
yes.
Training within their agencies. And folk are coming out of those trainings and saying, hey, I'm still not going to change the way I police. I feel
right.
like I'm doing it the right way.
Right.
What is the right way? You're doing it your way.
Right.
If you can't see me as a person,
right.
Although I'm a different color than you,
right.
then you got problems.
And you said something that sparked another thought that I've had in my experiences as a pastor, dealing with people every day, especially counseling people, and sometimes people that have different issues, whether that's mental health issues or what have you. I've often said, whoever you are as a person, that's what you're going to bring to the position. So if I got anger issues, I'm going to be an angry teacher, an angry preacher, an angry doctor, an angry sheriff.
Yes.
If I am a crook, if I steal, then I'm going to have sticky fingers, whether I'm working at the corner store, the gas station,
exactly.
or in a Fortune 500 company. Whoever you are as a person, you bring you with you. And so the training that you're talking about, I think that's something that needs to be said directly to these officers. Like, who are you as a person? Because these implicit biases that you talk about, there's also these other personality quirks, your temperament, how do you solve conflicts just in your daily life? Because that will spill over into whatever position you hold.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And there again, people see themselves as, hey, I don't have any problems. They don't see their problems.
Right.
And just what you said, we all have problems.
Yes, sir.
And sometimes we bring those problems to our job, but you are who you are.
You are who you are.
And you have to be willing to change that.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you. But it boils down to the issues and problems we're having in our country.
Yes.
We are policing the old way, the same old way. We have got to change. Society is changing daily. Generations are changing. So the way I policed, and I'm in my 32nd year. So the way I policed 30 years ago, listen, I got to be willing to change some of that.
That's with everything, right? Like the way church went 30 years ago, we've had to adapt, how to do church, the way medicine and the whole medical field has evolved in the last 30 years. Obviously, policing has got to evolve as well.
Yes, you're exactly right. And I tell you another thing, that an issue that, I've taken to the governor's office and throughout the Sheriff Association is mental health. Mental health is real. The mental issues, there are a lot of people who are warehoused in our jails and in prison because of mental health. And, we have the critical incident training now, where our deputies are being trained on how to handle these incidents. Somebody get in trouble and go to the extreme. We need to get to the bottom of that. They committed a crime, but we kind of want to see what caused this.
The root causes.
The truth, get to the root of it. Now, you might not get to the root of that cause on the night of arrest. But, and I say, when we're looking at reentry, reentry start from the point of contact. As soon as an officer make contact with somebody, now you got to be thinking, okay, well, this person is being charged with, even if it's murder. I mean, if you don't get life in prison, or you die in prison,
you coming out at some point.
You coming out. So somehow, some way, we have to implement some type of rehabilitation for folks so they don't come out the same way, because we're going to get the same old. Matter of fact, they're going to be a little worse because they're institutionalized. So we got to be careful, how we police, put folk in jail, send them through the system. And I tell you, another thing needs to change. It's not the police. I mean, it's our entire judicial system. Is, our state's attorney's office, our public defender's office. How they see these people now once they're in the system.
Because a person that doesn't have money, a person that doesn't have money to defend themselves, they don't stand a chance in the American justice system.
Exactly. And you see it, especially in a community like Gadsden. A lot of folk are indigent. They go to jail, and sometimes the bonds is $125. They sit in jail for 4 and 5 months, can't pay it. And so, we have to figure out a way to these stresses that we have on the judicial system. We have got to figure out a way to navigate folk through the system in a way that we rehabilitate them and make sure we send them out. Now, if you just out there getting in trouble, just be getting in trouble, we're going to deal with you.
Right.
I mean, you deserve to go to prison for as long as the crime intend for you to be there. But at the same time, if we don't try to rehabilitate folk, how this person going to come back to our community?
And Sheriff, you're speaking to a lot of what my dissertation work is about. I'll be finished next year, or probably the year after. But I'm dealing with a restoration model for the churches, because once the justice system gets through with somebody who has fallen, or once a person has dealt with addiction and now they're just left out there, a person that has fallen, made a mistake, made a bad choice in life, once the system, whatever system it is, gets done with them, there's got to be something in place to help restore them. restore their
Yes.
dignity, restore their place in their families and in their community. But a person doesn't
Yes.
have those tools on their own. And what it really sounds like is that what it really sounds like is that you are kind of using your platform and your position to restore people. Yeah,
Yes.
there's punishment, no different than when we were growing up, right? If you did something,
Yeah.
mama got you, the lady down the street got you, daddy got you.
Yes.
There are consequences, but then there should also be some compassion in there. And quite frankly, I don't always hear that from a sheriff or from a captain. So to hear you say it is so refreshing.
Yeah, and since I've been sheriff, and the last 17 years, I've had over 27,000 people to come through the system, and for a small community, like Gadsden, that's a lot of folk. At one time we was actually sending more people to prison than we was graduating high school. All these things that are going on in our community, the poverty level. You take all these things in account, and you're sending folk to prison and jail, and so you don't have anything behind that.
Right.
So you look at a reentry piece, the restorative piece, like you're talking about. And you said, okay, well, how far are you from getting a job? In what area? We see a lot of folk come to jail with a skill set like it's unbelievable.
Wow.
And not everybody's going to be a doctor. But right. I guarantee you, when a doctor, when his car breaks down, he needs a mechanic. If something break in his house, he gonna need to call that plumber or that AC repair person.
Yeah.
And so these skills matter. And if you can help somebody, even without a skill set,
mm-hmm.
if you can put somebody on the right track, even while they're incarcerated, to where if it's just lawn service.
Right.
Learning how to, trim lawns or whatever. That's a skill set for this person.
Yes.
So now that person can take that and they can go out into society and use that and make money in lieu of committing more crimes.
Yes, sir. Because what I hear a lot from, the many of the brothers and sisters that come through and that need a job or looking for employment is that, well, I got this on my record and nobody will hire me with this and that. But what you're talking about is, hey, use your creativity, use your own skill set, and you can employ yourself. Yes. You can be an entrepreneur, without a degree and without, anybody else's blessing.
That's right. That's right. I think, if you go back to just even, and I try to look at a community where I live, even in this state.
Yes, sir.
When you look at the way things was created, God created man and then woman, and then there was a family.
Yes.
And so family is first. Then you got government, and then the church. And so you take these entities. And if you got a broken family, you got to figure out a way how to mend that family back together. We got a lot of single parents, right. A lot of folk who don't have both parents for whatever reason.
Right.
I take incarceration. We have a lot of homeless children when it comes to living on the roof with a parent. They living with grandmother, aunt, friends, and all of that. And so when that family is broken, we have to figure out a way how to mend that back together, especially through incarceration. And so, I went out and got a grant to where, we restore families. Because when you got mother and father who has been incarcerated, or just one parent,
right.
that child has a 65% chance of becoming what their parents are. And you take me, I'm a police officer, the one and only child I got. You know what he does?
What's that?
He's a police.
There you go.
So, hey, that's a 65% chance. He just loved the fight to be a police. But at the same time, if I was a drug dealer, if I was a criminal, hey, my child might be following in my footsteps.
That's it.
And so we got to figure out there again, when these parents are just a parent, mother or father, comes out of prison, we got to figure out how to mend that family back together.
Yes.
Because if there's a child, especially, around, 3 to 5 years old, they're watching that parent. So when the police go into that house, rehabilitation not only starts for that parent, it starts for that child.
Yeah.
The police just came and arrested my mom or my daddy.
Right.
They're traumatized. And
That's
so,
to hear you, express in this way, it gives us hope. And when you and I talked offline the other day, I told you that I wanted people to hear and to see law enforcement done the right way. That's why I wanted to interview you in this space, because you're doing it the right way here in Gadsden County, and you're taking that extra step, going that extra mile to actually, and I'm going to say, minister to people, where they are, and realizing that it's not just that one person, but it's their family, it's their community. And I truly believe the advantage that you have, being a native of Gadsden County, is that you know the people. Because you literally have 4 or 5 generations that, okay, boy, I know your grandmama. Stop acting like that. Right. Girl, I went to school with your uncle. Don't you? Now, I'll tell your grandmama on you. You better stop.
That's right.
That's that community, that village that it takes to raise a child. And I think that really gives you an advantage, and it gives you a heart that you don't really see in a lot of other contexts.
Yes, sir. And you said village. And right here, years ago, I did the village concept, and if you take your community and look at it as such, a village.
Yes, sir.
And within that village, I mean, these families, and that's why it's so important to start off with a family.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you don't figure out a way to deal with issues within your village, they're going to become more of an issue, and it's going to be uncontrolled.
That's right.
And then you're going to start trying to figure out how to bring people in to rid your problems.
Right.
We don't need somebody from North Carolina to come here and tell us how to live in Gadsden County and what we need to be doing. We need to figure those things out ourselves.
Yes.
Because we are the community.
That's right. I believe that. And what a wonderful concept, too. That whole village concept. You've been innovative, you've been creative through this whole space. And of course, the last 16, 17 months, that all of us have been thrown a curve and have had to do some praying through this pandemic. What has policing been like, or what has your position evolved into since the pandemic? And now that we seem like we're coming out of it and hope we don't go back into it, what has changed about your work in the last 17 months?
Well, first of all, during the pandemic, I mean, you want to listen to the health experts, because I'm understanding that the people under me, for his employees and folk in the jail, I got to figure out how to keep folks safe.
Yeah,
we still got a police. We still have to serve the community. We still have those folk who we got to take care of, who can't take care of themselves in the jail. And so, it was mind-boggling to figure out how to keep everybody safe. We did lose 2 folk during the pandemic, Deputy Faison and Mrs. Franklin, one of our receptionists.
Yeah.
And that's just been, heartbreaking to me. But at the same time, we still got a job to do. And so we've been navigating through this pandemic. And while we're navigating through the pandemic, throughout the country, we saw, too, an epidemic of gun violence. And so, we've seen where, a lot of young folk has been gunned down, ganged up in gangs and all of that. And we have seen some who are actually, especially the ones been gunned down and gone to jail for murder. They've never been in trouble before. I mean, it's mine, but, kids, coming out of church and joining gangs.
Yeah.
And so the pandemic just sort of flipped things upside down to like folk wasn't paying attention, and we was all caged up in our homes.
Yeah.
And so young people, this young generation just kind of looked at it different, like they was first, they were just vulnerable, that, hey, it's a illness that, don't phase the young. And while we was out trying to figure things out and keep our families and in government keeping things safe, our children was doing other things.
Right.
Social media didn't stop during the pandemic. It got even bigger.
It did.
And some misuse it in a way that, especially with gangs, we didn't see it.
Yeah. Now, because cybercrime is a thing now. Cyber crimes and, that whole element and people recording these fights that are happening in the school. So now that becomes a whole unit by itself, I imagine.
Yes, sir. That's it. And, it's some of the things that, and this is where I say, we can't police the way we did 30 years ago. And so we got to change the way we do things, whether it's in the field, through, IT or social media or whatever.
Yes.
We got a law enforcement itself, that whole entity, whether, it's on the federal level, through FBI, on the state level, through FDLE and some of the other state agencies and even local agencies. We have got to change the way we police because things are spiraling out of control.
Yes, sir.
When you got the democracy when it comes to our parties, both are pulling apart and almost want to fight war against each other. I mean, we have got to figure out how to bring our communities, our folk back together and make our communities safe.
I agree. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Sheriff Morris A. Young, Gadsden County, Florida, 30 plus years of service, to his community and to all of us, keeping us safe and showing us a better way to police. I think this is the best way to get the trust of a community. As I often say to my older church members, you can tell a child or young person just about anything if they know you love them. You can correct them about, whatever it is they're wrong about if they know that you love them and getting that relationship with them. And to have you on today, sir, is a pleasure. And I appreciate you taking the time. I wanted to ask you about this idea of recruitment. All over the country, we're seeing that some folks are dropping out of the field, very similar to teachers not wanting to, be in the classroom for whatever reason. So people are dropping out of education. But how is recruiting going for Gadsden County and what can we do to spark even more interest in the field?
Well, this is one of the areas that we talked about last week at the Sheriff Conference in Naples. All over the state, we're actually having issues recruiting folks. So that retention, even retaining people, and so for a lot of people, the pressure of all the national issues surrounding police.
Yeah.
Folk are retiring. Folk are going into other fields. And so it's really a tough time. And this is an organization, or I would say an entity that we can't afford to lose. We gotta, and it gets back to this. It's not police and community, because the police is a part of the community. That's a part of it. It's like the grocery store in the community. It's like the library in the community.
Right.
And so we got to stop looking at it as two different entities. I am the community.
Yes, sir.
And I'm the police.
Yeah.
And so, I remember when Coach Simmons called me to speak to his football team when all of this George Floyd thing, all the marching surrounding George Floyd. And he was nervous about keeping his folk together because, he had little control. You got players all over the country, and they want to join the march and all of that. And I remember talking to those young men and telling them that we have to stop looking at a issue in these other states that doesn't pertain to this community.
Right.
We are taking the entire profession and we're saying the entire profession is bad.
Yeah.
I mean, you get we got to trust these entities that I talked about, the family, government, and in the church. Mm-hmm. We have to trust and believe that we got trusted people in those entities. You got folk in your family that you trust. You go through a situation, you got somebody that you can go to and talk to.
Yes.
In the family. Same thing in government. Right. You have to trust the people that we place in government. There's some bad folk in every area. That do some bad things.
That's right.
But we don't take down the institution.
That's correct.
Because of a few bad apples. We just got to figure out how to weed out the bad apples.
Right.
And we got to move on because you want your property protected.
Absolutely.
And the first thing you're going to do is automatic. Somebody breaking your house or do an alt to you, you're going to dial 911. Yes. And you want the police.
I want them.
And this entire profession is fading away right before our very eyes.
Wow. And I think what is important to differentiate, as you said, separating the incidents from the institution, because there are certain institutions like the police, like the sheriff's department, like the church, like the school system. The institution itself is good. And so you have some individuals sometime that will make it bad, on the whole institution. But I think what needs to be separated is when young people of any generation, in your generation, my generation, we've all had protests or demonstrations for one thing or another for the last 100 years. What has to be separated is when we're talking about systemic issues. Because as the sheriff, you have power over the system. So you can actually make policies and allocate budgets and resources for things like a village concept. That's the power that you have. But there's certain systems that we are not in control of that don't have a Morris Young in position where they allocate funds in a different way or they set policies in a different way. So I think a lot of time what we're protesting is a system that seems to be against us. But we have to separate that from the institutions and even those individuals that we may consider bad apples. What do you think?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it's a process through elections and through, our governments that we can change. I mean, the one thing that I, as a sheriff, can take from the folk is that elected process.
That's it. Gotta vote.
They can take that from me.
Yeah.
And so we just got to believe that there's a good in all these entities and organizations that we have. There's some trusted folk in there.
Absolutely. And you, sir, are one of them. That's why voting matters. We can't stress to our people enough, even though we're not in an election season at the moment, get familiar, make yourself aware of who these candidates are, what they stand for, because come November or August for that matter, when these primaries come up and then later on the general elections, sometimes we look up and down the ballot, and I'll confess this last time there was some positions in Gadsden County, I didn't know who them people were. And so I realized that our son will be a voter this time next year. We got to become more familiar with who these individuals are that we're putting in place. It's not just president. It's not just senators and congresspersons. It's not just our sheriffs, but even our judges, our prosecutors that we put in place and all these other little positions that we don't think matter.
Yes.
Voting matters.
Voting matters. And we got to continue to stress that. We got to stress it off season. We can't wait till that time come. Like you said, we know that there's a process coming up 6 months to a year from now.
Yes, sir.
We have to prepare for that season before it get here, not when it get here. Right. Those folk who, say, well, my vote don't count. And I'm going to vote and I'm excited about voting. And then 6 months from now, just a little rain and outside and said, well, it doesn't mean it. Oh yeah, they ain't gonna miss my vote. We listen, we're gonna miss your vote.
Absolutely. We miss it, in many states that we could name right now, flipped or turned a certain way only by a few votes. And so our vote matters, especially at the local level. The president of the United States does not control the Gadsden County budget, nor law enforcement. That's our local elected officials. Whether you're talking Leon, Jefferson, Gadsden, all over this Big Bend area, we got to be more intentional with our voting efforts.
Yes, I totally agree with you.
Yes, sir. Now, how many more years are left in your term?
I just started this term in January.
Yes,
and of course it's a 4-year term.
Yes, sir.
And so it's actually lined up with the presidency. So
gotcha.
I got 4 years left.
Well, I'm starting right now the Morris A. Young re-election campaign for 2024. We need you back in there unless the Lord says something else. But we so appreciate the work that you're doing. And I want you all to share this conversation. Let somebody know what's going on. And there are good law enforcement officers and officials in place. Sheriff, as we close, what is your vision, moving forward for Gadsden County? What do you see for your department and for your community?
Well, right now, the number one priority for me is to continue to push mental health. It's real. It's big. It's one of those things that we have to recognize. It's okay to come out and say, hey, I'm depressed about something. You got to find a way to get help. You got to be able to call those numbers, hotlines or what have you, to get help, with suicides and not only that, but people reacting in a way that's causing a criminal nature behind the way they act. And so, the mental health piece that we are actually implementing in our jail now, it's an awesome piece. And those young men now, they got the opportunity to now, stress and make sure that they say, hey, what are their issues? It's totally voluntary. We don't push it on them, but we know that there are just, some folk that who have been institutionalized for an issue, for a problem that they possess. They just so happen to commit a crime and doing it, and now they're warehoused. And so, I'll be going across the state, stopping at the governor's office, which, I truly believe that regardless of who in power,
right.
I went to a Republican governor. This is a Democratic county, and I stressed the fact that mental health is real. And Governor DeSantis, I mean, he allotted me a $1.2 million grant through DCF to implement in the jail, because we gotta have it.
Awesome. That's awesome, because there's so many layers to a person's character. I could have just been having a bad day, or I may have some deep-seated, mental or emotional dysfunction or issue. And for you to take that intentional step to minister to that, I think is awesome. You broke out those 3 layers, of the government, the church being there, and of course, the schools and what have you in the community. I think that's the formula. That's the formula right there.
Yep. Yes, sir. And we just got to keep working, keep believing in each other.
That's it.
There's a common good in anybody.
I believe
no matter
that.
how bad you think they are, there's a common good. We just got to seek and find it and point it out and let the person know that, hey, you got to change from some of those ways you have.
Yes.
But there's a common good in all of us.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, this has been another edition of Man Cave Monday. This has been Sheriff Morris A. Young, Gadsden County, Florida. Thank you so much, sir, for doing this. It means a great deal to us, and thank you so much for your time.
Yes, sir. I enjoyed it, and hope you have me in the cage again.
Oh, absolutely. Yep, the Man Cave. We're going to have you here, And y'all, don't forget to share this. Again, comment on it. We want to see your comments. It'll be up on YouTube at some point in the next day or so. So whenever you're watching this, head to our YouTube page as well. Again, this has been another edition of Man Cave Monday, Season 3. Can't believe it's been 3 seasons already. Thank you for your continued support. And again, Sheriff Young, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Yes, sir, Pastor. Thank you for having me.